this video lecture, and in this video lecture I will be discussing previous year's NEET questions and also explaining the answers. And as you can see on your screen, it is for the chapter breathing and exchange of gases, and this is part 4 of the series. Okay, and as you know, as you've been watching my videos, you would know that please keep a paper and pen with you so that you can note down the answers and the explanation if you need. Okay, so let's begin. All right, question number 1. The respiratory centers which control inspiration and expiration are located in, and this question appeared in AIPMT 1999. Let's look at our options A, B, C and D. Okay, so I would suggest you pause the video and think about the answer and then come back. Okay, all right, so we have our first option A, diencephalon, which is incorrect. That does not have the respiratory controls. Then B is medulla oblongata, which is correct. That is the place where the respiratory center is present. C is cerebellum, again it's the incorrect answer. And D is spinal cord, which is the incorrect answer. So let's take a look at the discussion. Yes, so B is your answer, medulla oblongata, and we'll look at the discussion here. Okay, A. So the respiratory center is composed of group of neurons located in medulla oblongata. Okay, as I've already stated previously. Cerebellum is also part of the hind membrane where the medulla is present, but it does not contain the respiratory center. Okay, diencephalon is present between the telencephalon and the midbrain region. Okay, so that was also the incorrect answer. And lastly, spinal cord. It is a tube-like structure beginning from the end of the medulla oblongata and continues till the lumbar region of the vertebral column. So this was a pretty direct question. You had to remember your fact and you could have easily answered this question. So I don't think there should have been a problem answering this question. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so let's look at the second question. The respiratory center which regulates respiration should have been is located in, and this appeared in 1994. Okay, so let's look at our options A, B, C and D. Okay, again I would suggest you pause the video and think about your answer and then come back. Okay, so yeah, cerebellum is our first option, which is incorrect. Medulla oblongata is the second option, which is the correct answer. It is the respiratory center which regulates respiration. C, cerebral peduncle, which is again incorrect. D is the vagus nerve, which is again incorrect. So your answer should have been B, medulla oblongata. So let's look at our discussion. A. So the respiratory center is composed of group of neurons located in medulla oblongata. Okay. Cerebellum is also part of the hind membrane but does not contain the respiratory center. Again, it is the same as the first question. This is again direct. Cerebral peduncle are two stalks in the midbrain that connect the cerebrum to the brain stem. And lastly, vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve, and it is the afferent nerve fibers that pass from the aortic bodies to the respiratory center in the medulla, and they help regulate respiratory activity. They help regulate it, but the group of neurons are located in medulla oblongata. Okay, so they are if you remember how the chemical regulation works, there are peripheral chemoreceptors. That's where you find aortic bodies. Okay, chemical chemoreceptors. So aortic bodies are part of the peripheral chemoreceptors. Okay, and aortic bodies are present the wall of the aortic arc. Okay, they are present there and they detect levels of gas in the blood. So usually when PO2 levels drop really low, that is less than 60 mm mercury, they tend to activate, but they are not as potent as the carotid bodies, which I will explain again. I will do a separate presentation where I will be discussing neural and chemical regulation of respiration, okay, of breathing. So where all this gets is included, and you will be able to understand, you'll get the whole picture of how the neural and how the chemical regulation happens in breathing, okay, where I'll be explaining the group of neurons in medulla and the aortic bodies and the carotid bodies also, okay. So for now we have to just understand that the medulla is the place where the group of neurons are present, okay. It's the respiratory center. All right, okay, so let's move on to the next question. All right, question number 3. Due to increasing airborne allergens and pollutants, many people in urban areas are suffering from respiratory disorder that causes wheezing due to. Okay, and this appeared in 2019, which is quite recent. We have A, B, C, and D options. And again, I would suggest you pause the video and then think about your answer. Okay, so option A, reduction in the secretion of surfactant by pneumocytes, which is not true. B, benign growth on mucus lining of nasal cavity. Again, this is also incorrect. Inflammation of bronchi and bronchioles. Yes, if you have written down C, that is the correct answer. So, due to airborne allergens and pollutants, it results in the inflammation of bronchi and bronchioles. And D, proliferation of fibrous tissue and damage of the alveolar walls. That is also incorrect. So your answer should have been option C. Okay, and let's look at the discussion. Okay, so now what happens is inhalation of chemical pollutants and allergens result in the inflammation of bronchi and bronchioles. Okay, now it is characterized by, now what exactly happens? Okay, it is characterized by hypertrophy and hyperphagia. Now what hypertrophy means? Overgrowth. Okay, overgrowth. And hyperphagia means increase in the number of cells, okay, of the mucus and the goblet cells that line the bronchi. So the mucus and the goblet cells that are present in the bronchi, there is hypertrophy and hyperphagia of these cells, that is overgrowth and the increase in the number of cells. All right, and so the linings of the bronchi swell and produce excess mucus. So because of this hypertrophy and hyperphagia of those cells, there is excess mucus and the linings of the bronchi swell. And so the typical symptom is regular coughing. So the patient is continuously coughing. There's regular coughing with thick greenish yellow sputum. So when you have thick greenish yellow sputum, it indicates that there is some infection in the bronchi. Okay, there is an inflammation in the bronchi. Okay, and so the doctors usually prescribe bronchodilator drugs, okay, that are used to widen the bronchial passage by relaxing the smooth muscles. Okay, so this is the treatment for inflammation of bronchi and bronchioles. So once the bronchial passage they widen, it becomes easier to breathe. Okay, air can move in and out a little better than when there was swelling. So if there is swelling, again the swelling, there will be sputum over here, there will be excess mucus, there's blockage, so air cannot move in and out. Let me take another pen. So air cannot move in and out as easily because it is getting obstructed. All right. So this is the treatment for that. So if we look back at our question, it causes wheezing. So if, just because there is a blockage in the bronchi and the bronchioles, air is moving through a very small passage, and this results in a sound. Okay, this results in a sound called wheezing. Okay, so when that person is breathing in and out, you can hear a faint sound because there is a blockage in the passageway, okay, in the respiratory passageway. All right, so this is why when you in urban areas specifically, when there's a lot of pollution and the allergens in the air, they suffer from a respiratory disorder that causes wheezing. Because of this, there's inflammation of bronchi and bronchioles, and that is caused by the hypertrophy and hyperphagia of the cells in that bronchi and bronchioles, and so they swell up and there is excess mucus which blocks the passageway, and that results in wheezing. Okay, to summarize that, this is what it is. All right, so I hope you've understood that, and this is quite recent, so this is an important piece of information to remember. Okay, I believe this is also there in the NCERT, so you can go back and read your topic. All right, okay, we've already discussed this. Let's move on. Okay, question number 4. Which of the following options correctly represents the lung conditions in asthma and emphysema respectively? Okay, please remember, asthma and emphysema respectively. Okay, and this appeared in 2009. Let's look at our options. We have A, B, C and D. Okay, again I would suggest you pause the video and then come back to this answer. Okay, so the first one, inflammation of bronchioles and decreased respiratory surface. That means in asthma there will be inflammation of bronchioles, in emphysema there should be decreased respiratory surface. Which is the right answer? Okay, B, increased number of bronchioles, increased respiratory surface. No, that doesn't happen. C, increased respiratory surface and inflammation of bronchioles. No, decreased respiratory surface and inflammation of bronchioles. No, it should have been the other way around. So when they have said asthma and emphysema respectively, that means asthma part should be first and emphysema part should be after the semicolon. All right, so please don't confuse yourself when they have written such questions. Okay, so your right answer should be A. So if you've written down A, that means you got the correct answer. Okay, so let's look at the discussion. Asthma. Okay, we look at asthma first. Now it is characterized by spastic contraction of bronchioles. That means abnormally continuous large amounts of contractions of bronchioles. Okay, so which leads to partial obstruction and extreme difficulty in breathing. Okay, so that causes obstruction, and then because of that it becomes extremely difficult to breathe. Now what happens? Now in an allergic person, that they already have a tendency to form abnormally large amounts of IgE antibodies. Okay, so an allergic person will usually have, or they have a tendency to form large amounts of IgE antibodies, AB's antibodies. Okay, and these antibodies are specific to that allergen, that antigen that has caused this production of antibodies, which you will study in detail when you study human health and diseases, how that antibody and antigen reaction works. Okay, so these antibodies are produced in large amounts that cause allergic reactions with specific antigens that have caused them to develop in the first place. So they're specific antibodies. Now what happens is these antibodies are attached to mast cells. Okay, this IgE is attached to mast cells. Okay, these are called mast cells. And when the allergens attach themselves, now when allergen, for example, somebody is allergic to pollen grains. Now this pollen grain has enter the respiratory passageway and attaches itself to this mast cell, this IgE mast cell. Okay, it attaches itself to it. What happens is it releases several factors. And one of them is histamine. By several factors, I mean it releases several chemical substances, and one of them is histamine. Okay, and now this leads to local edema and secretion of thick mucus in the bronchiole lumen and spasm of bronchiolar smooth muscle. Okay, so what happens is edema, that means there's swelling. So this results in swelling. Okay, and also secretion of thick mucus. So swelling, just ignore this. Swelling plus thick mucus will result in obstruction. Like I previously explained, what happens in the allergens, airborne allergens, you have your bronchioles, they're all swelling up in the lumen, and plus there is a lot of mucus. So air will not be able to pass as easily as it should. Okay, so because of that there will be obstruction. This is the lumen area, the space between the two linings. Okay, and this causes spasm of the bronchiolar smooth muscles. That's why bronchodilators drugs are given, okay, for the treatment. So this causes spasm of bronchiolar smooth muscles and the person cannot breathe. Okay, it becomes very difficult for that person to breathe under such conditions. So this is what asthma is. Okay, then we'll move on to the next one, that's emphysema. Okay, and I will explain that to you. Okay, yeah. Now emphysema, pulmonary emphysema literally means excess air in the lungs. Literally, that is the meaning. Okay, pulmonary emphysema literally means excess air in the lungs, and it is an abnormal distension of bronchioles or alveolar sacs of lungs. Okay, so that means air remains inside the alveoli and the bronchioles, and so they remain permanently inflated. Okay, distended as in inflated. Okay, there's air always present. That means there's no proper expiration happening. Okay, so once the lungs become permanently inflated like this, abnormal distension of bronchioles happens, then they lose their elasticity, and we will come to that, what it means, what exactly happens in emphysema. Okay, so emphysema is a result of many years of smoking. All right, so somebody who's continuously smoking for many years, okay, it causes infection. Okay, there's excess mucus and inflammatory edema of bronchiolar epithelium that causes obstruction in the passageway. Okay, so first of all, there is infection because the macrophages are inhibited. What happens is the macrophages in the alveolar are inhibited. I put a minus sign here, so they cannot fight off infection. So this results in infection. All right. Then there is inflammatory edema. That means the swelling in the bronchiolar epithelium. Okay. So there is swelling, okay, in the bronchiolar epithelium, and that causes also obstruction in the pathway. Okay, that we have understood how that causes obstruction in the pathway. We've already seen that in asthma also. So a similar situation happens here also. Okay. Then lastly, there is loss of alveolar walls. Okay, there's a loss of alveolar walls, which decreases the diffusing capacity of the lung, which reduces its ability to diffuse oxygen and remove carbon dioxide. Okay, so what I have said previously, if the alveolar walls are continuously distended, they lose their elasticity. This is what I mean. Okay, sorry. If the alveolar walls are continuously distended, they lose their elasticity. Okay, they lose their elasticity, and also the alveolar is structured in such a way that it increases the respiratory surface area. Okay, the alveolar are constructed in such a way that they have to keep the respiratory surface area increased. Okay, so now when these alveolar walls get damaged over here, let me choose another pen. These alveolar walls get damaged over here inside because of continuous smoking, then the respiratory surface decreases. So there is no proper diffusion of O2 and CO2. Okay, there is no proper diffusion of O2 and CO2 because the respiratory surface has decreased. So again, the elasticity also is diminished, and the alveolar walls also start getting damaged because of emphysema, and so because of that it reduces the respiratory surface area. Also, the bronchiolar is also obstructed. Again, that is also affecting the respiratory method. The gases moving in and out is getting obstructed, right, because of this edema and mucus and all being secreted. So that is also affecting this. So overall, it is reducing the respiratory surface area. So to answer your question, if you go back, in asthma there's inflammation of bronchioles, and in emphysema there is decreased respiratory surface. So emphysema, always smoking, is a big no matter what. Smoking results in emphysema, and you've seen what are the effects of continuous smoking. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Okay, so let's look at the fifth question. Which of the following is an occupational respiratory disorder? Okay, this appeared in NEET 2018. Now let's look at our options. We have A, B, C and D. Okay. Again, I would suggest you pause the video and think about what you think is the right answer and then come back. Okay. A. A is anthracis, which is incorrect. B is silicosis, which is the correct answer. So you've written B, that means B is your right answer. C, botulism, which is incorrect. And D, emphysema. We've already discussed emphysema in the previous question, so you should have known that. There shouldn't have been a problem answering this question. Again, this is a factual based question, it's there in NCERT. So please read occupational respiratory disorder. It is there in the NCERT book. Okay, so your answer should have been silicosis. Okay, option B. Let's look at the discussion. Okay, so these disorders are due to the occupation of the individual. Okay, occupational respiratory disorder. Occupation respiratory disorder. I'm writing in short form. Okay, So this is occupational respiratory disorder. So it is based on the occupation of the individual, and they are caused by harmful substances such as gas fumes or dust present in the environment where a person works. Okay, so these disorders are caused by the inhalation of gas fumes or dust that are present in the environment where a person works. Example, silicosis and asbestosis. Okay, silicosis and asbestosis, they are they are caused because of the chronic exposure of silica and asbestos dust in the mining industry. Okay, and they are characterized by proliferation of fibrous connective tissue of the upper part of lung, which causes inflammation. So simple. Okay, so there is too much, there is an excessive production of fibrous connective tissue in the upper, CT is connective tissue in the upper part of the lung, which is called fibrosis. Okay, which causes inflammation. Okay, so because of that, you have a disease called silicosis. So such workers that are working in mining industries, their health should be regularly checked. They should be wearing protective gears and masks so that they don't fall sick. Okay, so such precautions should be taken for such workers. So this was a pretty direct answer. There shouldn't have been a problem answering this question. So it's quite simple. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. All right, question number 6. Name of the chronic respiratory disorder caused mainly by cigarette smoking. Again, we've already discussed this, so you should know what the answer is even before looking at the options. This appeared in NEET 2016. Okay, so let's look at our options A, B, C, and D. Okay, again, pause the video, think about the answer, and come back. Okay, A, respiratory acidosis, respiratory alkalosis, emphysema, asthma. This is again straight up facts. There is no need to spend too much time. You should remember all your facts. This is C, emphysema. That is it, and I've already explained emphysema to you, but we look at the discussion. Okay, so literally means excess air in the lungs. Okay, and it is an abnormal distension of bronchioles or alveolar sacs of lungs. Okay, so due to many years of smoking, causes infection, excess mucus, and inflammatory edema of bronchiolar epithelium that causes obstruction in the passageway. So bronchioles are obstructed. Yeah, bronchioles are obstructed. Okay, because of edema and excess mucus inside. Also, alveolar walls are also affected. Okay, that means there's continuous distension of the alveolar wall, so they lose their elasticity. Also, the alveolar are constructed in such a way to increase the respiratory surface area. Okay, so that there is proper diffusion. Now, if those walls are damaged, then what happens? It will decrease the respiratory surface, and so exchange of gases becomes very difficult. Okay, and breathing also is obstructed. Okay, so the overall respiratory surface area is decreased. Yeah, so loss of alveolar walls decreases, so the diffusing capacity of the lung, which reduces the ability to diffuse oxygen and remove CO2. Okay, so this I've already explained. This shouldn't have been a problem. It's a very direct question, so you should have been able to answer this quite easily. Okay, so if you remember these facts, you can easily answer these questions, not waste too much time on it. Okay, let's move on to the next question. All right, asthma, question number 7, sorry. Asthma may be attributed to, this appeared in NEET 2016. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so again, I would suggest you pause the video, think about the answer, and come back. Okay, option A, inflammation of the trachea. No. D. Accumulation of fluid in the lungs. No. C. Bacterial infection of the lungs. No. D. Allergic reaction of the mast cells in the lungs. Yes, and I have already explained this, so this shouldn't have been a problem answering this question. Okay, your answer should be D. Allergic reaction of the mast cell in the lungs. We'll take a look at the discussion again, even though I've explained this to you before. So they are characterized, asthma is characterized by spastic contraction of bronchioles, which leads to partial obstruction and extreme difficulty in breathing. Allergic person has a tendency to form abnormally large amounts of IgE antibodies. So the specific IgE antibodies, okay, and that are present in a person who is allergic, okay, and these IgE antibodies are connected to mast cells, okay. These IgE antibodies are attached to mast cells. So now when an allergen comes in and attaches itself to these cells, sorry, this should be antigen or an allergen, attaches to these mast cells, they release many chemical factors or chemical substances, okay. One of them is histamine, okay. One of those factors of chemical substance is histamine, okay, and this histamine causes a reaction. This leads to local edema and secretion of thick mucus in the bronchiolar lumen and spasm of bronchiolar smooth muscle, okay. So this leads to swelling, then swelling, plus there is mucus, and so there is spasm of the bronchiolar passageway, okay. Swelling, there is contraction, okay, spasm, there is continuous contraction, okay, and so it is obstructed. So airway, take another color, airway is obstructed, okay, and so it becomes difficult to breathe, okay. I've already explained this to you. So now you know, now you realize that mast cells and antibodies are involved in this whole process, okay. So if you remembered this whole piece of information that I have stated here, you should have been able to answer that question quite easily, okay. So this is an important piece of information. Please note it down if you like in your notebooks, okay. This is important piece of information, how IgE, how antibodies, how mast cells are involved in the asthma reaction. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Okay, question number 8. Name of the pulmonary disease in which alveolar surface involved in gas exchange is drastically reduced due to damage in the alveolar walls. And this appeared in NEET 2015. Let's look at our options. Again, pause the video, but I know by just looking at the options, you know the answer. We've already discussed this, Omid, and again, this is a direct question. This shouldn't be a problem in answering this question. So you have A, pneumonia, B, asthma, C, pleurisy, D, emphysema. Where are the alveolar? Which disease is this where alveolar surface involved in gas exchange is drastically reduced due to damage in the alveolar walls? We just discussed this. This is emphysema. Okay, we already discussed this. Okay, so the alveolar remains distended, so that damages the elasticity. Also, the alveoli is constructed in such a way that it increases the respiratory surface area, but when these walls are damaged, what happens? It decreases the respiratory surface area, okay, and so gas exchange becomes difficult, okay. Can we look at the discussion anyway? Literally means excess air in the lungs. There's abnormal distension of bronchioles or alveolar sacs of lungs, and so this is caused by smoking. So you realize they're asking the same thing, but they're using different ways to ask that same question. The answer is the same, but they're using either it's smoking or either it is due to alveolar walls damage of alveolar walls, they're more or less asking the same thing. They're coming down to the same answer. So if you remember these points, you will be able to answer the question easily. So there's loss of alveolar walls, which decreases the diffusing capacity of the lung, which reduces the ability to diffuse oxygen and remove CO2. Okay, quite simple. Okay, let's move on to question number 9. Which of the following is the correct statement for respiration in humans? And this appeared in 2012. Please remember, they say which is the correct statement. Please read the question carefully. If they say incorrect, then please mark the incorrect statement. Don't mark the correct statement. Say, oh my god, what did I do? Okay, this happens. So that is why it's important to read the question carefully. Okay, which of the following is the correct statement for respiration in humans? Now let's look at our options. Okay, we have A, B, C and D. So let's pause the video and then you write down what you think is the right answer and come back. Okay, A. Cigarette smoking may lead to inflammation of bronchi. No, it reduces the respiratory surface area. Okay, it reduces the respiratory surface area, so that is incorrect. Neural signals from pneumotaxic center and pons region of brain can increase the duration of respiration. No, that is also incorrect. It does not increase the duration of inspiration. Sorry, it will stop the inspiration. Okay. C. Workers in grinding and stone breaking industries may suffer from lung fibrosis. Which is the correct statement? We already discussed silicosis. You remember, if you go back to the video, we have already discussed silicosis. It causes lung fibrosis. Okay, proliferation of fibrous connective tissue in the lung. Okay, so this is the right answer. D. About 90% of CO2 is carried by hemoglobin as carbaminohemoglobin. Again incorrect, right? So that is the incorrect answer. About 23% of CO2 is carried by hemoglobin as carbaminohemoglobin. So your right answer should be C. Simple. Let's look at the discussion. Again, occupational respiratory disorder caused by harmful substances such as gas fumes or dust. So present in the environment. So example, silicosis and asbestosis due to chronic exposure of silica and asbestos dust in the mining industry. And so this is characterized by proliferation of fibrous connective tissue in the upper part of the lung, which causes inflammation. Okay. Now for extra information, now we have already looked at our options. We know the neural signals from pneumotaxic center and pons region of brain can decrease or not decrease, but it stops the duration of inspiration. We will see how. Okay, this is extra information. It is there in NCERT, but I will explain it to you in a little bit of detail. Okay, so if you read NCERT, it is there, but I will explain it to you a little bit of detail. The pneumotaxic center is a switch off point. Okay, just remember the pneumotaxic center is a switch off point, and this whole process occurs in the neural regulation of respiration. Okay, switch off point of the inspiratory ramp along with inputs of the vagus nerve from lungs. Okay, thus it controls the filling up phase of the lung cycle. Hence its function is to limit inspiration. Okay, its function is to limit its inspiration. Okay, so let's look at it from a diagrammatic point of view, so we'll be able to understand. Now when inspiration happens, it does not happen in one go. You don't just fill in air in inspiration just immediately and fill up the lungs. No, you realize that when automated breathing happens, there is slow or gradual increase of air inside. Okay, this is called an inspiratory ramp signal. Okay, inspiratory ramp signal. Okay, and so air moves in slowly. Okay, this air moves in slowly and increases. Now this inspiration process lasts for 2 seconds. At that time, signal is sent to diaphragm and the external intercostal muscles, IC muscles, external intercostal muscles, and so they contract and inspiration happens. So now there is a pneumotaxic center present in the pons region. Okay, a pneumotaxic center is present in the pons region of the brain, which is a switch off point. It acts like a switch off point. Okay, after 2 seconds it will stop. It will tell the inspiratory RAM signal, okay, enough, now you've inhaled enough air, you need to stop. So a pneumotaxic center is activated during that time and it stops the inspiratory RAM signal. Okay, at this point. Okay, now enough, I've had enough. And this process repeats itself again and again. Okay, so this lasts for 3 seconds. Then again this inspiratory RAM signal gets activated, again the switch off point comes in, again inspiratory RAM signal, again switch off point. Okay, so switch off point in the is the pneumotaxic center. Okay, and it's not send any signals to the diaphragm or the intercostal muscles. Okay, it does not send any signals to the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscles, and so it relaxes and expiration happens during that 3-second period. Okay, expiration happens during that 3-second period. Okay, now this whole inspiratory RAM signal is all happening in the dorsal group of neurons. Again, like I've already previously said, I will make another video where I will be explaining neural and chemical regulation and how they regulate respiration, neural and chemical respiration regulation of breathing. Okay. Okay, this will be a separate video. Okay, where I will show you the whole picture, the whole story from the beginning to the end. Now, all I want to tell you that pneumotaxic center is a switch off point. Okay, another speciality of this pneumotaxic center is that it can alter the respiratory rate. So, no, what has been found? Let's say this is your respiratory center. Okay, this is a representative diagram. You have to take another pen. Okay. Here, so you have DGN on one side, you have ventral group of neurons on the other side, you have a pneumotaxic center over here. So this pneumotaxic center will send a signal to DGN. This is DGN. This is VGN. This is ventral group of neurons. Okay, these are not activated during normal quiet breathing. And this is your pneumotaxic center. Okay, so this sends signals over here. Now it has been found that if you put an electrode here and stimulate it, okay, you stimulate this, what happens? Okay, it will reduce, it will reduce this inspiration. Okay, this is what happens if the signal from this pneumotaxic center is given. It has been experimented. Let's say there's an electrode here and there are signals given here. Okay, this stimulates the DGN in such a way that the inspiration time decreases. That means instead of 2 seconds, it will be only 1 second. So the inspiration time becomes 1 second. Okay, so expiratory time also reduces, right? If inspiratory time reduces, expiratory time also reduces, what happens? The respiratory rate increases. So it has the ability to alter the respiratory rate. Apart from the switch off signal, it has another function where it can alter the respiratory rate by reducing the time of the inspiration. And so if inspiratory time reduces, expiratory time also reduces. If that also reduces, then again the inspiratory time, it will go on to the next inspiratory time phase, then the next expiratory time phase, and then it will increase the respiratory rate. It can go up to 30 to 40 breaths per minute. Okay, it has the ability to alter the respiratory rate, and this is also mentioned in NCERT. If you read your NCERT text, apart from the switch off signal that it plays a role in the switch off signal. I've already explained. After 2 seconds it will send a signal here and it will switch off. Apart from that, it has also been experimented that if you place an electrode here and stimulate this, okay, it will send signals to the DGN where it can alter the respiratory rate. All right, so this is another function of the pneumotaxic center. Okay, so this I have explained briefly on how the neural regulation works, and like I have said, I will make another video about the complete picture of how neural and chemical regulations are working together in the human body. Okay, so let's go back to our question here. Our question says, now look at option B. Neural signals from pneumotaxic center and pons region of brain can increase the duration of respiration. No, it cannot. Another piece of information. What if this pneumotaxic center is damaged? Okay, it is not functioning. Then the inspiratory rate, time will increase little more. Time will increase, but by then the vagus nerve from the lungs will come and then tell the DGN no, stop. So it will not stop at 2 seconds. The inspiratory time will increase a little more. Okay, if the pneumotaxic center is damaged. Okay, this is another piece of information to help you understand how the pneumotaxic center actually works. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. All right, question number 10. Blood analysis of a patient reveals an unusually high quantity of carboxyhemoglobin content. Which of the following conclusions is most likely to be correct? Patient has been inhaling polluted air containing unusually high content of. This appeared in 2004. Let's look at our options. Okay, and again I would suggest you pause the video, think about the answer and come back. And your answer should be, let's look at our options first. A. Carbon disulfide. No. Chloroform. No. C. Carbon dioxide. No. D. Carbon monoxide. Yes. Your answer should be D. Carbon monoxide. Your giveaway was carboxyhemoglobin in the question itself. If you see carboxyhemoglobin, it means carbon monoxide poisoning. Okay, so this is a very big hint. This is a very big hint in the question itself. So if you see unusually high quantity of carboxyhemoglobin content, that means it's carbon monoxide poisoning. Let's look at the discussion. We will look at it in detail. So carbon monoxide has a greater affinity for hemoglobin than oxygen. Okay, forming a stable compound called carboxyhemoglobin. Also, carbon monoxide binds with hemoglobin 250 times faster than oxygen. So 250 times faster. So if there is a hemoglobin over here, and if O2 and CO had to race against each other, CO will obviously reach faster, and before O2 can reach. So this 250 times faster, and it has greater affinity. It has greater affinity, and it binds with hemoglobin 250 times faster than oxygen. Okay, so because of that, it occupies the space that oxygen should usually occupy in the hemoglobin. Carbon monoxide reaches there before because it is faster and it has greater affinity. Also small, now this is another interesting fact. Apart from the greater affinity and 250 times faster occupation of the hemoglobin, also a small partial pressure of carbon monoxide is enough to saturate hemoglobin, and this causes low supply of oxygen to tissues. Very small amounts of PCO is enough, okay, to occupy this hemoglobin. Okay, very small amounts of PCO is enough to occupy the hemoglobin, and so this results in the low supply of oxygen to tissues. So oxygen to tissues decreases. Okay, so this is the tissues. Oxygen supply to tissues decreases because now it is occupied by carbon monoxide and very small amounts are required for it to occupy. Because of that, it has greater affinity. It is 250 times, it occupies faster than O2, and so because of that, O2 loses the race, the competition. We'll look at that a little bit in detail. And so when oxygen tissues levels drop, it is characterized by headache, dizziness, nausea, paralysis, and even death. So carbon monoxide is very dangerous. Carbon monoxide poisoning is very dangerous. Okay. So if there is low supply of oxygen to tissue, what happens? It will be characterized by headache, dizziness, nausea, paralysis, and it could even lead to death. Okay, that is why it is important to understand this carbon monoxide poison. It could be fatal to somebody. Okay, let's look at the graph. Now you are familiar with the oxygen graph, oxygen hemoglobin dissociation graph, oxygen hemoglobin HEB dissociation graph. Okay, now one thing, the reason why I put this graph is to just show you that the PO2 in the x-axis are 20, 40, 60, 80, but look at the PCO in this x-axis, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. Although it's the same, the shape of the graph is the same. Okay, the shape of the graph is the same, but very small amounts of partial pressure of carbon monoxide are needed, okay, to occupy the hemoglobin. That is why it makes it very dangerous. Carbon monoxide poisoning becomes very dangerous. Okay, I just wanted to show you a graphical representation of this. Okay, so to answer your question, let's go back to the question. So which of the following conclusions most likely to be correct? And patient has been inhaling polluted air containing unusually high content of carbon monoxide, and carboxyhemoglobin content is the giveaway. Okay, when you see that means it's carbon monoxide. Okay, this is a fact. This you should write it down in your notebook and you should remember this. This is a fact, and if you get a question like that, then you should be able to answer this. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Okay, all right, question number 11. When CO2 concentration in blood increases, breathing becomes. This appeared in 2004. Let's look at our options A, B, C, and D. Okay, A is shallower and slow. No. There is no effect on breathing. Again, no. Slow and deep. No. Faster and deeper. Yes. So if you have written D as your answer, then it is correct. So this concentration, when CO2 concentration in blood increases, breathing becomes faster and deeper. We'll see how. We'll look at the discussion. Let me change the pen. I've been using yellow all this while. Change it to red. So there is a chemosensitive area present beneath the ventral surface of the medulla. Okay, now this chemosensitive area is the central chemosensitive area that I'm talking about. And this also helps in the chemical regulation of breathing. Okay, and this area is highly sensitive to changes in either the arterial blood PCO2 or hydrogen ion concentration in the interstitial fluid of brain and CSF. Okay. Now, hydrogen ions do not easily cross the blood-brain barrier unlike CO2. Okay, so hydrogen ions do not have the ability to cross that blood-brain barrier unlike CO2. If you've seen my previous presentations, you know what I'm talking about. But I will explain it here also. Okay, so don't worry. And so carbon dioxide passes through the blood-brain barrier, reacts with water from the extracellular fluid to to form carbonic acid, which dissociates to form hydrogen and bicarbonate ions. And these hydrogen ions then stimulate the dorsal group of neurons, and hence breathing becomes faster and deeper. Okay, we'll look at it from a diagrammatic point of view, so don't worry if you don't understand. Here, so you have arterial blood here. Okay, and now we know, remember it's always arterial blood, okay, that is crossing that blood-brain barrier, and that is what is influencing all these changes. Okay, PCO2 has increased over here. Alright, I'll take another pen. PCO2 has increased over here. Okay, now CO2 that is there in this blood has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. Okay, it has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. H plus ions cannot cross that. Okay, so CO2 will cross. Okay, and CO2 in that interstitial fluid and the CSF will react with the water present there. You are aware of this equation, the bicarbonate buffer. Okay, CO2 will react with the water to form H2CO3. This is again a reversible reaction, H2CO3, and then they dissociate to form H plus and HCO3 minus. So this H plus ions that are there, this activates the chemosensitive area, and that activates the DGN, the dorsal group of neurons. Let me show you the respiratory center again. Okay, here we are. We have DGN, we have VGN, we have this pneumotaxic center here. Okay, and the chemosensitive area is present over here. This is the central chemosensitive area. Okay, chemosensitive area. Okay, so the reaction is taking place here. What happens? H plus ions have been formed in this area. H plus ions have been formed in this area, and this H plus ions move to the chemosensitive area and activated. Now this is stimulated, this sends a signal to DGN. Now you do your work, now you do your job. Okay, you do your job and they are highly stimulated. Okay, the DGN area becomes highly stimulated. Okay, DGN area becomes highly stimulated. It also spills over some stimulus to VGN area, ventral group of neurons. Okay, this also spills over stimulus to the VGN area, and both of them then combine and it makes your ventilation faster and deeper. Okay, so to answer your question, your question is answered here. The ventilation becomes faster and deeper. Okay, so it results in actually what we call as hyperventilation. So you're breathing fast. Okay, sorry, you're breathing fast. So ventilation becomes faster and deeper. Okay, so now what happens is from the if we look at it from the inspiratory ramp signal. Now what do you mean by faster and deeper? We have seen the inspiratory ramp signal when I explained the pneumotaxic center, right? That was for normal breathing, for normal quiet breathing. So now when faster and deeper ventilation happens, this ramp signal becomes more steep. Okay, this ramp signal becomes more steep. Okay, and it becomes faster. That means quick inspiration, quick expiration. There's quick inspiration, quick expiration, quick inspiration, quick expiration, and it is more steep. So what does steep mean? Steep means your tidal volume has increased. Okay, that means your alveoli has expanded. Your alveoli has expanded to accommodate air inside and also remove air. Okay, so tidal volume has increased, and with quick inspiration, expiration, quick inspiration, what happens? Respiratory rate also has increased. This is what you mean by faster and deeper. Like, faster and deeper are very normal generic terms. But what exactly is happening? Your ramp signal becomes more steeper than normal quiet breathing. Okay, and this increases the tidal volume. Along with that, there are quick inspiration, quick expiration. So instead of 2 seconds, it'll be 1 second inspiration. Then quickly it'll be expiration. Again, it'll be inspiration. Again, it'll be expiration. So what happens? Your breathing rate has also changed. It has also increased. Okay, so this is called hyperventilation. This condition. Okay, this is called hyperventilation. Okay, this actually comes under chemical regulation of breathing. Okay, where changes in the blood gases are observed, and then based on that reactions happen. Okay, so you see how they are all interconnected. Okay, now I've explained it separately to you, so it looks like different blocks, but when you put the whole picture together, you will see that they are all interconnected together, and then you will be able to get a good idea of how this whole system works. Okay, so remember, always when CO2 in the blood increases, concentration blood increases, breathing becomes faster and deeper. Okay, so this was actually a good question. So this is a smiley face. This, you needed to apply your knowledge in this. This is not direct. You had to think. You had to think and you had to apply your knowledge in this. So this deserves a smiley face. This is actually a good question. So if you understood the neural and the chemical regulation, you would have been able to answer this question quite easily. Okay, but then this actually shows how well you understand the whole breathing process, this question. Okay. Okay, so we come to the end of our video lecture. And I hope you've enjoyed today's video lecture, and I hope you've learned something new and you've taken something new from today's lecture. And please like, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to MG Neat Biology. And I will see you again in the next video lecture. Okay, so bye.